Italian Club first got started was started by Dr. Kenneth Ciongoli and a group of other Italian Americans who were new to Vermont and came here and never realized that there was an Italian community here because it was the 1970s and the previous community had already been raised. And Ken always felt very strongly, coming from South Philadelphia, like he did, and by the way, he was also Kenny on American Bandstand. The idea is that we would have a big family sculpture of Italian families carved from Barry granite by Italian craftsmen. Well, maybe that'll be phase 2. But for right now, I guess I wanted to say that it was Ken's idea, and finally we're doing it. I was sad to say, for those of you who don't know, that Ken passed away about 2 years ago. And my regret is that I didn't get to finish this project while he was still alive. But I encourage all of you to join the Italian Club, because there's a lot of people here that I know are not on our database. And a little commercial, if you join this year, one of our sponsors for this year is Vermont Bicycle Tours, biking and walking vacations. And if you join this year, you could win a free 10-day bicycle or walking trip to Tuscany. Now, that doesn't get you to want to join. And it's the fact that we're having homemade meatballs and homemade cannolis and cookies following this. And maybe you're not really Italian. So I just wanted to, before I introduce our speakers for today, just go say a couple thank yous to our sponsors. BBT, Bicycling and Walking Vacation, 7 Days, Main Street Landing, and I'm forgetting one other person here. Oh, Select Design, who did all the beautiful posters. And I just want to go over the schedule, in case any of you just happen to wander off the street and don't know what we're doing today. We're going to have our guest speakers today, who I will introduce. And then at the end of that, we're going to proceed Italian style, passeggiata, with musicians ahead of us, down south on the path here into the lobby of 60 Lake Street. And when we're there, at 1:30 and 3:30, we will have the program presented by Joe Maeda and then a panel of descendants of the old neighborhood. And I want to thank John Veracchione for putting this all together, and David Tomasi for his technical support. And so that will be 2 different showings, 1:30 and 3:30. In between, there's plenty of food and music and dancing and real Italian music with real Italian musicians. So we hope that you all join us for that. So I'd like to introduce all together our speakers and honored guests. We have Senator Patrick Leahy. No, I am not senile yet. I did not invite an Irishman by mistake. He is part Italian, and he said that his mother... That's right. He just told me, he said, his mother would have died again if he hadn't come today. So we thank him for coming. And then we will also have after him Mayor Bob Kiss, who actually did live within the confines of this old neighborhood before, right, Bob? Wherever you are, remember? Yep. Years ago, he lived here, and he's not Italian at all. We want to hold that against him. And Philip Baruth, who is a representative to state government now, and he is also a professor and a writer, and he's going to read from a piece that was on a VPR program, I think, a few years back, which I think you'll find very moving. And I'd like to acknowledge our honored guests here. We have Barbara Ciongoli. And Lola Aiken. Now, again, I did not make a mistake. Lola is all Italian. And she came to us today from Montpelier so she could be here. And it's really a treat to be able to have her here. So, if I could please have the good senator, come up, and you'll all use this big mic because that's what's getting recorded. Thank you. Thank you.
And I should note that it's Patricio Giuseppe. Leahy. Otherwise, I'm an Ireland's Patrick Joseph Leahy. But, buongiorno. Bellissimo essere qui con tutti i miei amici in una giornata così bella. Sì, una giornata, è una bella giornata. Essendo italo-americano, questo è un giorno speciale per me. Now, as a child, I had to speak Italian with my grandparents. I kicked myself I didn't do it better, or learn it more. But basically what I was saying, for those who are saying, what kind of Italian is that? I'm just glad to be here. On a beautiful day. My grandparents, Nona and Nona, immigrated to Vermont from everybody spoke Italian at home. We children had to speak Italian with their grandparents. They were stone carvers. My Irish grandmother was also stone carver. But they're from the areas of Bedoya and Hidalgo, up in the Friuli, Aviano, Portoni, Rosen, Commerciadona, Commerciadona areas. We visited often. I remember coming here in this area though. And boy, I'm so glad you're doing this. Because I remember coming here as a child with my mother, and there was a real Italian community. They'd go to the stores. My mother wanted to make sure she had proper rapid fire Italian with the store owners own put the wine shelf would open up and then the better cheese would come out. I thought it was great, and her cousin, Mom was still alive, came over to visit. One of the happiest memories we have is my mother and her cousin sitting on the back porch singing childhood songs together. One learned them here in Vermont. The other one learned them in Italy. They're singing them in Italian. They were the same. Their mothers were sisters. They taught their children these songs, and their parents and grandparents and great-grandparents back in the 1700s. Same song. And it was beautiful. Now, I did take my mother. This is why I said Marcel and I would definitely be here, because Mom would tell us to be. I took her to Italy on her 80th birthday. We're sitting in my aunt's kitchen. Everybody's speaking rapid-fire Italian. I'm getting one word and three, and I finally said in a local dialect, I said, Mama, aspetta un momento, non capisco. Wait a minute, I don't understand. She said, you should have paid attention. Now, Lola Aiken was in Montpelier with my mother, both as young women. She could probably hear my mother saying that. And my mother didn't think of me as the United States Senator. I was her little boy, and I should have paid attention. Mama, you were right. Very short story about why my family in Italy means so much to me. 10 years ago this week, somebody or some people mailed a very deadly letter to me, filled with anthrax. The letter I was supposed to open. It never reached my desk, but it killed at least 2 people who touched it on the way to my desk. The news hit Italy, and my cousin called me from Italy to make sure I was all right. The next day, the whole village went to the one church for a mass for my safety. We should all remember our time. Thank you.
Recognize the history of Italian Americans and Italian heritage people in building the city of Burlington, shaping its future, even today as we speak, with that heritage. And what I want to acknowledge is really the work by the Vermont Italian Club to actually see this plaque come to fruition. It's been a long process, but as mayor, I like and I'm happy to be able to acknowledge the history of the city in terms of the immigration that shapes its future. We're in that same kind of a boat now as people contribute to the future of Burlington, emigrating even today. And it's great to look back on sort of the historical antecedents of people who came to Vermont and the United States to seek opportunity and to build their lives. In terms of this particular event, what we're looking at right now across the street is where an Italian neighborhood used to be. Burlington has been reasonably successful in its urban renewal effort. But what it meant was that a community of 140 homes and many people, gardens, and institutions were all lost to our hopes for progress in 1960 and after. I know when I first came to Burlington in the mid-'70s, I lived in the Omnium Gatherum. That's a building across the street from Beau's Restaurant and also from M&M Market. And people are going to appreciate that Omnium Gatherum was a place where troops were housed in the War of 1812. I've lived here a long time. But when I went out my door in those years, the front door, it would be to Beau's or around the corner to M&M. And of course, at M&M, I talked to Louis Marola and Bob Marola and Rose and Tony Marola. And one of the things that Louis always had talked about was sort of the sadness for what was lost when this community disappeared. And I think in some respects it never gathered in the same way that it had evolved originally. And for a lot of people, I appreciate that this was a sort of a heart-wrenching period in Burlington's history. And I want to acknowledge the sacrifice that was made, and I guess we would say for the greater good. But I know many of you appreciate how many things were lost and how difficult it was to shape progress in that way. So today we're moving forward, and I'm glad that the heritage of Italian Americans in Burlington will be acknowledged by this plaque. Sort of in the same way that when you go down to Barrie, there's a stonecutter there, and the stonecutter and all the history around it to celebrate our past. With that said, I'm looking forward to the unveiling, and I'll be here to celebrate again in advance.
For attention to be paid, and I had in mind a plaque very much like the one standing behind me, so I will read you from that piece with a sense of deep thanks for Mayor Kiss and the city, Adele, Ralph, and the rest of the Italian Club for making that particular piece of writing come true. I came out of the early 1970s a firm believer in the ability of the wrongfully displaced to reassert themselves, the ability of the evicted and the repressed to return. It's a karmic idea that the sins of developers can be visited on their newborn buildings, and it's certainly not a new one. But it comes to mind every time I strap my daughter Gwendolyn into her elaborate Scandinavian sling and walk down Battery Street to Cherry, where Burlington's new Filene's department store now stands half-finished. Because Filene's now occupies the space that was once a thriving Italian neighborhood in the 1960s, before developers and city officials decided that it would be best for everyone if the entire neighborhood were condemned and bulldozed to make way for more promotional tenants, including the Radisson and the Burlington Square Mall. Bluntly put, that land, some of the most desirable commercial land in Burlington, in fact, in the entire state, was taken by a sort of legalized force from the people who lived and worked and raised families there. In the name of 1960s urban renewal, an entire community was disappeared. Granted, it's been upwards of 30 or 40 years since bulldozers removed every trace of what I call the lost Italian neighborhood. And granted, cities grow by sloughing off their scales on a regular basis. But there is a fundamental difference between replacing tenants and buildings and displacing them, and the difference is a moral one. So what's to be done? Filene's also represents the last and best hope for keeping Burlington's Church Street downtown area vibrant and competitive with urban sprawl. In almost every way, Filene's is a good thing, a powerfully good thing for the city. So I would quote Arthur Miller from Death of a Salesman: "Attention must be paid." When Filene's opens, there will be a ribbon-cutting ceremony, and the mayor will no doubt have a few words to say. There will be music, and no doubt some wealthier people will be offered champagne, a selection of cheeses, and a preview of the merchandise. Somewhere in all that fanfare, attention must be paid. Mention should be made of the many lives that were moved to one side to make that building happen. Some respect should be shown. That's all I'm saying, and that's not a great deal to ask. The truth is that people and things not properly laid to rest have no choice but to walk. And I'm delighted to say that with this plaque today, we pay honor to those people, those families, and that entire community.
The group and with community involvement be producing 4, they call them interpretive signs, you've seen them along the waterfronts and things, with the Lake Champlain Basin program, and we'll be collecting photographs and stories because we're going to put 4 signs around the perimeter of what was once the Italian neighborhood, explaining for people what the life was like here, so that they don't forget. I mean, when you go down and have some of the meatballs down there with Frank Delamore's sauce, and he told me he gets people calling him all the time and say, what, they're Italians in Vermont? And we don't want them to be able to say that. We want them to be able to come to our website and have information there. So if you have family albums, if you have stories to tell, we would like to archive them, because I have to say, I went to Bailey Howe Library, I could hardly find anything about this community, and we want to right that wrong as well, and we can with your help. So, again, I thank you all for coming. This is just beautiful, and I hope you'll come down, follow the music down the hill, and have some more fun and see the films. So we're going to show Patrick Farrington's film, the South Champlain Urban Renewal Project as well. So, thank you, and let's see. Can I reach that, or somebody else?
Go for it, Adele.
I don't think I can reach it. I think somebody else has to pull that ribbon.
Music?
Have Joe come up. Somebody else. Come on here. Joe.
We are with you. Right here.
Okay, you ready?
Ready?
Yeah, it is a good thing.